Hello, everyone. So today we're going to continue on, and we're going to get into some of the empires in the second half of the Middle Ages. And specifically today, we will start with the Seljuk Turks. And here we have a nomadic group that is going to then eventually form an empire. And we'll see a few different groups do this along our way here. So let's get into it. All right, so the Seljuk Turks are a Turkic group that originated somewhere in Central Asia long time ago. Central Asia is home to many Turks, the Kipchak Turks, the Gurj Turks, the Kumans, lots of different groups. But the Seljuk Turks, and I'll explain why they get their name, are right here in the area between the Aral Sea and the Caspian Sea. Now, what's interesting, you see how they're down here. They're very close to the Ghaznavid Empire, the Buyids, and the Abbasid Caliphate. This is crucial because they were like in touch, if you will, with local empire. Now, do they do some raiding every now and again? Sure, but they would also have some trade contacts, and things will really start to pick up the pace at the end of the 10th century. Most of this particular Turkic group is going to be able to be united into kind of like one kind of cohesive group by a man by the name of Seljuk. That's all we know about him. This is actually a depiction of him up here. You see him reading a book. That's actually the Quran. And we don't know a whole lot about Seljuk. We do know in the year 985, he converts to Islam and thus converts his people to Islam along with him. And as a result of that conversion, these groups are going to be looking to become more involved with their empires to the south. And starting in the late 900s, they will start to migrate down into what is modern-day Persia or Iran and Afghanistan, and start to adopt particularly like Persian language and stuff like that. And that is going to give us a little bit more information because now we're going to have some writing, stuff like that. And they're going to be very unified. They're these nomadic horsemen, so they've got a lot of strength. They've got a lot of skill. And it's not going to be before too long that they decide that they want to be in charge. And the guys that are going to lead that charge will be Tugrul and Chagri, who are considered to be the founders of the Seljuk Empire. They will take the title of Beg, and it's very similar to like Lord, so Tugrul Beg and Chagri Beg. The first group that they start to move against to consolidate land will be the Ghaznavids, and actually starting in the year 1037, they will seize some of their first land, and by 1040, they are able to establish themselves in what will be modern-day Afghanistan, and now they are going to start to move east, and they will start to conquer a chunk of what are called the Buyid dynasty. Then they will start to move into modern-day Anatolia, and then have quite a few battles with the Kingdom of Georgia, who they will fight quite a bit, to really get themselves established as this kind of big empire that's going to really stretch from, the Mediterranean all the way out to Afghanistan. And the big empire that they had to deal with were the Abbasids. And I've talked about the Abbasids before and their strength and their power. And for a while, right around the year 1000 or so, they will work with the Abbasids. Tugrul at one point will be considered to be like a vassal of the Sultan of the Abbasids. Eventually, they realize that they are way stronger than the Abbasids, and in 1055, they will be able to crush the Abbasids and take the city of Baghdad. And they really, at that point, they take over basically much of Iran, almost all of Iraq, and absorb a lot of other land that the Abbasids held. Now, the Abbasids are going to hold on. They will kind of move a little south. They'll be able to reestablish themselves a little bit later, but they're pretty much gone as a power at this point. And what the two brothers decide to do is split their gigantic empire, and I'll show you some visuals in a little bit. Tughril will run the west part of the empire, and that is Western Iran, Azerbaijan, and Iraq, and then reaching into modern-day Anatolia. And Chagri will rule in the east, in eastern Iran, Turkmenistan, and most of Afghanistan. And there we go. We now have this gigantic empire. It takes them about 20 years to do it, but in 20 years, they're going to have one of the larger empires in all of Asia. Changri will die in 1059, and Tughril will die in 1064. They will be succeeded by the son of Chagri, Alp Arslan. Now, they do have a little bit of a timeout here because you have a bit of a dynastic war. You basically had a bunch of cousins that will fight it out, and Alp Arslan is able to take control. I'm not going to go through all of that. The big thing is he is going to expand. He is going to take all of Armenia. He's going to be able to pretty much finish everything up in Anatolia. And he's also big for establishing the government that will be used. And really this central area, if I go all the way back to the Persians, they were the empire that first started to divide up their empire into different sections and have local governors rule over it for them. And Alp Arslan is going to do the same thing. You will get local begs. They will get that title. As long as they are loyal, they collect taxes, they will be able to run these localized areas. But probably his biggest success, and actually happened right before he died, would be defeating the Byzantines in the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. This is huge because basically it pushes the Byzantines completely out of Asia. The Byzantine Empire, of course, as its height, as we've seen in previous videos, is absolutely massive. Well, you know what? Not anymore. They are completely driven out. This is going to be something of a basis of what will help spur on the Crusades 20 years after this. But as you see here is a picture on the right of the Alp Arslan as his forces defeat the Byzantines. But this is a huge blow and really establishes the Seljuk Empire as, like, watch out, these guys are a world power and not to be messed with. The guy that probably is the greatest of all of the rulers who takes the empire to its height is Malik Shah I. Malik is the son of Alp Arslan. And Malik was also very much aided by his Persian vizier Nizam al-Mulk. And these two guys are going to really be able to put the empire at a position in which, you know, it was getting bigger under his grandfathers and his father, but under Malik, it's just, this is the power that everybody has to mess with. However, they do have to deal with a terrorist group. Yes, we've had terrorist groups now. You guys know about them, but the Assassins, they were a Shia terror group that did not like the Sunni Turks. And they would actually, and they also felt that these new Islamic empires were a little bit too worldly, that they were getting away from Sharia law too much, that they were involved too much in trade and stuff like that. And so periodically they would try to assassinate people to try to plunge the empire into chaos. And so the Assassins, you know, you can feel free to look up some videos on them later, but they were a group that you consciously had to deal with. And I'm going to talk about it because the Seljuk Turks aren't going to be able to completely wipe them out. The Mamluks are going to have to deal with them. The Mongols are going to deal with them. Like, there's a whole bunch of group that are dealing with these guys. But to understand their power, at one point they actually do assassinate Nizam al-Mulk. So it gives you an idea of what these guys can do. And the picture of the assassination there is in the bottom left. Now, the success of Malik, and you can see on this map here, is pretty impressive. Okay. He did have to deal with one main revolt in which his uncle Kavert tries to take over the empire, but he crushes him. It will be under him that his empire expands to its largest height, as you can see here, all the way to the end of what is modern-day Turkey, and then all the way out here to much of modern day Afghanistan and parts of modern day Pakistan. Well, almost to Pakistan, but mostly Afghanistan and Turkmenistan. I mean, this is a huge area. Okay. Basically, in order to run the government, you had to be a family member or friend that was controlled, that was given an area to control for viziers. Often did oaths of fealty, and these guys would be given titles of Atabeg. So you had the sultan or the beg at the top, not the sultan, I apologize, the beg at the top, who was in complete control of everything, and then the Atabegs who would run things for him, but they still had to answer to him. And when the beg made a rule, everybody had to follow it. There was no if, ands, or buts on that. For him, though, Malik would be assassinated by the assassins as well. One of the big things that the Seljuks that really will start to hurt them and eventually start their decline will be the Crusades. After Malik dies, the empire will be divided up a little bit amongst his sons and brother. And the other thing that really, so again, once you divide an empire, like give control over it to different people, I mean, it's just a matter of time before it's going to fall. You look in Europe, Charlemagne had this big empire divided amongst his sons and chaos. So that's what's going to happen here. The major issue that they have, and we'll talk about this a lot, is you have all these different ethnic groups and religious groups that you have to deal with. And it's really, really hard to do that, especially at this time, because you got the differences between Sunni and Shia Muslims. You've got Christians. You've got everything from Europeans to other Turkic groups to Persians to Arabs. So many different people that made it really, really hard. In the late thousands, starting in 1096, they take a huge hit. Well, the First Crusade finished in 1099, but they started off in 1096. You have the huge losses in the First Crusade. The picture to there on the right is the conquering of Jerusalem by the First Crusaders. Then in the early 1100s, the Georgians crush them and they'll break away. They are able to push back in the 1100s to take some of the land from the Crusaders, but they're still going to be a little wobbly. And eventually, you're going to get these tribal issues that I've already mentioned. Atabegs are going to start to pull themselves away. Again, Georgia, not only are they able to crush them and break free, but they're going to start to gobble up land that they used to take. They then are going to lose the Holy Land to the Mamluks in Egypt, or the Ayyubids here, so they're going to lose all that land. And then finally, you get the Khwarizmid Empire over here, who is going to be able to kind of put the final nail in the coffin. And then you see the Abbasids are able to reestablish themselves down there. And then the Mongols come in and beat the crap out of everybody else anyway. So that is the ultimate fall of them. So really, they only last for a couple hundred years, but still pretty impressive during that time. Now, some impacts of these guys, they're pretty huge when you look at the continued spread of Islam, especially in the East. That it will continue to push through into India, that it will continue to push through Southeast Asia, and that is really because of the push of the Seljuk Empire. Lots of universities, we'll talk about that in a separate video, and places like Baghdad and otherwise, you're going to see just incredible flowering of culture and science and tech. Persian and the influence of the Persian culture is going to be really, really huge, and it also is going to, the Persian culture is going to kind of get a revival at this time. And really, again, and I mentioned before, the hammering of the Byzantines. Like, the Byzantines are just going to get smacked. And, the Byzantines, now after 1071, they're going to hold on for 500 years. Don't get me wrong. But in that 500 years, they're just going to continue to lose everything until finally all that's going to be left will be the city of Constantinople. All right, so that's our first empire of this particular era. We're going to get two more, and I'll see you guys soon.